only 8% of the kids are reading at grade level. This has been going on for decades. The governor mentioned community schools. And the question is, that's one component, is as far as having, what do we do for these young children? You know, I believe all children are smart, all children can learn. But we have, for decades now, these kids going to public schools, you spend $120,000, and they come out and get jobs in McDonald's. They're not coming out with the skill sets that they need to be productive to get jobs. A lot of them wind up in the criminal justice system, and now instead of paying $15,000 a year, they're paying $60,000 a year. And I'm saying, why don't we put the money on the front end to make sure all children are on grade level? So if you're not on grade level in the first grade, you should go to summer school. Someone should be able to put you back on par as they do in other private schools. Not on grade level, they pull you out the classroom with a private tutor, get you back on grade level, push you back in. For some reason, kids aren't being pushed out, they're just being promoted onward without the skill sets. The second part of my question is technology. We don't have technology in our schools. We're giving 100,000 visas to people who come from other countries, and we're not preparing our kids for the next technological phase in life. Like, I had a hackathon in my district, first ever in Brooklyn, and the kids didn't want to go to bed. They were so enthusiastic, they were engaged. I'm like, and I wanted to cry. I said, why can't we engage these young children whose minds are open, who want to learn, but for some reason there's a disconnect when they go to school and they're happy and energetic, and by the time they get to middle school, they're not really engaged anymore. They act out, become more violent. And coding is something that I think we need more of in the classrooms. We need more technology in the classroom. In Florida, where you come from, the kids have tablets. Okay, they have tablets. Those are technology. I write a book. By the time it gets to print, it's outdated. Most of the private schools now, they have technology. The parents can email the teachers. They can monitor what the kids are doing. I think we're behind as far as being progressive and staying in pace on a global market. We're dealing on a global market now. We're not just dealing in New York State, the United States. We're dealing on a global economy. And I don't think our educational system is on par for a global economy. Only 15% of our kids of color are ready for college. I don't think it's a high number. What about the other 85%? Are we preparing them for plumbing, electrical skills, some skill sets that they can provide for their families and not get paid minimum wage and to depend on the government? So I know you're new, and I sent a lot, but the federal schools, we only have 8% of the kids being at grade level in technology. How are we going to prepare our kids for a global market?
So I think you identified a few things that I think are certainly already in place moving forward. I think the move to expand pre-K is extremely important. When kids walk into school and they're already not prepared or they're behind their peers, that's a problem. And I think the connection of school to family is absolutely critical, and we have to address those issues. Some of the work on community schools is doing that, but we have also a proposal in front of the House or the Assembly and the Senate to make sure that in fact we're putting connections in for community involvement in our schools. So we need an office for that in SED. We don't have one. I think it's extremely important. And I think one of the big issues for us is, what are we going to do when students are in there? There are strategies that are being used across the state in many places to really highlight those students that aren't successful and move them forward and make sure that their outcomes are great. And so we've got to use what's being done in a positive way in other places across the state. And there's some wonderful work being done in New York State. And secondly, on your issue of technology, I would say to you that the SMART fund that is in place in New York is a huge agenda. So $2 billion being put into technology. And let me share with you that across any of the other states, there's no state that, to my knowledge, that has that kind of resource that's been put in place to put technology across the state. And I think that's extremely important agenda, and ultimately it will lead us to having students have access to much more technology in their schools where all of it's connected and we can use whatever. So, so the 21st century is going to push us. We're in it, we've got to get into it much more deeply, and we've got to make sure that when our kids walk out of school, and whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, that they are craving the kind of technology that they have to use just to be successful at
So
all.
for the school that's been failing, kids reading at 8% for over a decade, do we rehabilitate it or do we just start fresh?
So I think it really depends on the school, the community, and the involvement that they've got. You have some schools that are on their way up, and there's a number of schools in New York that are in the turnaround process, and you're seeing the outcomes for students are much improved. You have other schools that have not done that. I think that we, at that point, have to take drastic action. If that is closing a school, then that's it. If it's taking over in receivership and having another person go in from outside and make the kind of tough decisions that need to be made, then I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
My list includes Rasenhofer. The next question is Rasenhofer, Savitsky, and Montgomery. David, did you raise your hand for a question? Okay, we'll put you.
Actually, I was going to, Senator Latimer's question on receivership, so you can take me off the list. She's already answered.
Okay. All right, next, Senator Rasenhofer.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome.
Thank you.
I represent Western New York, Erie County, Genesee County, and Monroe County, and obviously you're very familiar with Erie County. I just get the sense I've been sitting here for 35 or 40 minutes, and I can definitely tell you that there's a different vibe in the room, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that you've been a classroom teacher for a long period of time, and I think understand the relationship between teachers, students, and the family, kind of like a three-legged stool. So I'm very impressed to start off. The reason I mention the counties is because the districts are very different. Starting in the East, Monroe, the city school district, very much like Buffalo School District, where I've read a lot of what you're doing right there with Superintendent Cash, the changes that need to be made there. I have many districts like Senator Seward, rural school districts, Genesee County, normally very successful, but have problems of their own. And in the suburban school districts, my own district, the Williamsville School District, so while I like the Panthers and the job that Tony Day is doing in Sweet Home, I have a different allegiance when it comes to First Night football games. But, they're all the same type of schools. They're suburban school districts, and again, the challenges of each type are very different. So let me start off with a question about the rural school districts. One of the problems that they have is because they are small school districts, their kids cannot get the AP classes that they need to be successful, and then even to be admitted into certain schools because they don't have prerequisites. I had asked the prior commissioner years ago to address that problem. It's never really satisfactorily been addressed. So I'd like to ask you, what steps can we take when you go from a relatively small school district, and I know there's a question about let's combine, and that's in the future. What can we do now to allow these kids to get the AP classes so they can get into colleges that they need?
So one of the first things, and we've already started talking about this at the Ed Department, is putting a lot of the courses online and identifying resource teachers at the schools that can help. Okay, so if you're in a small rural district and you don't have a lot of students that can take calculus, but you want to make sure your kids have access to that program, because access is really what is the responsibility of educators. We have to get kids to where they can all be successful and that they can have access to, whether it's AP or IB programs or it's a career and technical program. We have to be really focused on how we can expand that access, and I think with the AP particularly, we've got to look at going online with the courses and providing resources at the school site. And we've already started talking about that. You may remember that there was a commission for technology that was, that had district superintendents that were on it, and one of their recommendations was to do online coursework for our students across the state, particularly addressing that issue in small and rural districts.
So let me ask you, how can we actually get this up and going? Because this is a conversation that I had with your predecessor about 4 years ago. You gave a very similar answer. And obviously, now you're now working on it 4 years later. So is this something that we can fast track, like for the start of September next year? Can we actually get this in place so we don't lose another year, again, whether it's on the technical side or on the AP side, to get these kids the opportunity? Because you had mentioned before, like with failing school, every year you lose. I mean, the kid can't catch up. I mean, we're
There's
here.
no question, every time you don't provide the opportunity and the access, that's another year and another group of kids that goes by. It's on our agenda. We have pushed, I have new staff members, a couple of them are here with me today. And our agenda is to get equity and access across the state. And that is a big issue, because if we don't provide that access, then as you pointed out, students don't have the availability of placement in certain schools and colleges across the country because they didn't have the access. So we've got to do it. It is on our agenda, and I don't mind coming back in 6 months and telling you where we are.
Okay, well, I will ask you in 6 months.
Call me.
Okay.
Senator Stavisky.
Well, hold on a second. That was just the first part of my 15-part question. Couple of other.
Make it a quick one, Michael.
I have a couple of other questions. Number one, I'm excited about the emphasis on career and technology, because I think for too long the mantra was everybody has to go to college, and now the community college is really providing a service that the high schools should provide. So I'm glad about that. One very specific point I want to mention is there was an effort to have computer science, because a lot of kids are into computers, being one of the requirements that you could use for your math or your science. Regent's Point, I'd like you to take a look at that to see whether or not you can use computer science, because it's certainly the highest level of rigor, equal to physics or calculus or chemistry or algebra. I think that's very, very important.
We're also looking at the availability of teachers with that certification and the issues that we have with that. In fact, I've been talking to the city, New York City, on issues that they have regarding getting teachers in so that they can have people that are certified to do some of the classes in coding and then the higher level classes in high school. So it's definitely an issue for us. We've got to open up that certification area and get the kind of people that can really do the higher level math and sciences related to it.
And one final question, kind of along the Senator Seward's question with Common Core and the opt-out movement. We're all reading reports that last year was the highest level, and this year is expected to be very high. And I've heard some of your comments, but nevertheless, we still hear all the talk that a lot of parents and students are going to opt out, and that sends a message that there's a lack of confidence. So where are you in being able to translate some of the reforms and changes that will make parents, teachers, and students comfortable that they don't have to exercise an opt-out, whether because they think it's unfair or as a mechanism of protest? What can we expect this year in terms of your communication with these groups to say, hey, we want you to buy in, we're moving in the right direction?
Well, I think a major part of kind of developing the trust back with the system and what we're doing in New York is some of the work that has come out of the task force that Senator Marcellino and I were both on. And I think on that task force were representatives from teacher groups and the unions, as well as parent groups, et cetera. And I think it's a matter of us communicating that we're making the change, working with our superintendents and the teachers across the state to say these are the changes that we can make for this year, and here's what we have planned in future years. Here's how, and I think a big part of it was moving the agenda away from using the test scores and the growth scores in teacher evaluation, taking that off the page for the next 3.5 to 4 years and working with those teacher groups to develop a fair and appropriate way to evaluate teachers that holds everyone accountable, but really focuses on what you can do to get better. And I think that what we have to do is continue to communicate that. We've gotten some requests from superintendents with very specific ways that they would like us to communicate it, and they feel like we can help them to be able to take that word out. The people that parents listen to are the teachers that teach their children, the principals who are in charge of their schools, and the superintendents that are in charge of that district. And if they're all able to say, these things are happening, we trust that they're happening, and these are changes that can be made right now, and we're moving in that direction, then I would hope that the parents, and I've talked to parents across the state, I would hope that they would realize that we are very serious and that we are making those changes, and we've listened to them, and I think they need to be part of the solution as we move forward.
I think you brought some fresh air into the room, and I think we all have reason for optimism to look forward, so thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate that.
I don't have a letter like Senator Seward, but we'll follow up and invite
Well,
you.
don't worry, I'm in Rochester and Buffalo a lot.
Yeah, okay.
You gotta do your homework.
Senator Stavisky, please.
Welcome. I
Thank you.
had the same feeling when that Senator Ranzenhofer expressed when I saw that you had 17 or 19 years of teaching experience. I breathed a sigh of relief, because too many schools in my district are led by principals who've never had a piece of chalk in their hand or used a smartboard in front of 30 children. I'm glad you mentioned the remediation issue, because graduations in New York City, I represent a district in Queens, are going up. And in fact, the mayor had a press conference at the school in my district. I was there with the commissioner, really a remarkable school, where they talked about how the graduation rate is improving. Because what bothers me, and I ask this question at the higher ed budget hearings each year, the taxpayers are paying state aid for the children to go to school, K through 12, and then they're paying again when the community colleges have to provide the remediation. And I think that's outrageous. The issue I want to raise, though, is totally different, and again, we're sort of parochial in some respects, because I represent a Senate district in Queens County where at the local school district, District 25 in Queens, 130 languages are spoken. It's an amazing school district, and children come from literally all over the world. In my Senate district, primarily from China or Taiwan and Korea. And they encounter special problems as well. And I just wanted to bring this to your attention and see if perhaps you and Commissioner Farina can come and visit. She's been there many times. But come and visit and see what's working and what's not working at some of these schools.
I think that...
And how are you dealing with ELL?
Right. So, as you're aware, the Regents moved on the regulations related to English language learners over a year ago, and those changes are, I think, extremely important for our students across the state. It's a gift to have a language and a culture other than American and U.S., because honestly, all of us could benefit from having that in the global society we live in. And so I think one of the things that both Chancellor Farina and I have talked about is how can we raise up those great programs that are working and say to others, these are the models that you should use. And so not only in New York City, but across the state, we have some great things being done in New York, and we really want to celebrate those things. And many of them are around how our students who come from other countries without speaking a word of English have great success. And we need to make sure that, that becomes the approach that we take in supporting all students to get there. So although the regulations 154 and whatever we've done to support those students, I think what we've got to do is support our districts in making sure that they can make all that transition. Those regulations had not been addressed for a number of years. I think what we've got in place is certainly a big shift, but a necessary shift for our students.
Thank you. And I too am a social
And I would
studies
say to you,
teacher.
on the issue of the remediation,
Yeah.
I'm working closely with Chancellor Zimfer, and I think it's important for us to be able to put in some kind of an assessment that would be an opportunity for us to know if a student isn't ready when they leave high school, and we find out in 10th grade what it is that we need to do to support them so that when they walk out of our high schools, they are ready for what they want to do. Whether it's post-secondary and career and technical areas, or whether it's going into a four-year college or university, they need to be ready and not have to go into remediation. Not only is it the cost, but it's also psychologically, it's much more difficult for those students to be successful and to actually finish. So they aren't they're not getting to the end of that line. When we put them in and say, you're not ready for the full-time university or college coursework, you've got to do remediation, but it doesn't count for you.
And don't forget the vocation. I taught at one point at a vocational high school, and there are jobs out there for
Yes, good ones.
good ones.
Well, and I think there's a very, very strong tie to the economic development of any state and the workforce that you have. Companies won't come to the state if you don't have workers that are ready to take the jobs they have, and we've got to make those things happen. And we need to do that in the context of our K-12 system, and you'll see in our budget request that that's part of it. I think it's very, very important for us to have those resources to do it.
Senator Montgomery.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to see that we have an educator who is also chair of our education committee for a change. So that's a welcome situation. And thank you. I'm very, very happy that you sort of hit the ground running and you have begun to listen very carefully. And I want you to know that I apologize for being late. There was a meeting with the Black and Puerto Rican and Asian caucus. And we voted you will be hearing from us, we voted to support your proposal.
I think you were with Regent Young.
That's right,
Yes.
with the Regent. And so I just want you to know that we are very encouraged to see that you're paying some specific attention to some of the difficult communities and populations. A couple of questions that I want to ask you. With regard to CTE in particular, you mentioned that you are working on certification. You raised that with the Regents, and I'm glad to hear that. Two questions, though, that I'm not seeing in your proposal, your budget proposal. One is, what are we going to do to focus on having the middle school become part of the pipeline into the high school, so that, especially with regard to the CTEs, and there are a couple of particular instances that I have in my district. There's a high school that is the Harbor School, and it is, I believe, the only maritime-specific high school, and it is in danger. They are looking for a middle school to become a feeder school for that particular school. And I suppose that's probably something that we can do more of with more of the high-end, so to speak, high schools. And the second part of my question is, where does the early college high school program fit into your budget proposal, and where are you with that?
So let me talk first about the middle school feeder pattern.
Yes.
One of the things that I think is particularly important is, once we establish the accountability system for districts, we give the local control and the development of curriculum to those districts to be able to develop the kinds of programs that you're talking about. having put in place a number of programs that were choice programs, magnet schools, it was always critical to have the feeder into the high school.
Yes.
Because students really get hooked into the interest that they have that they then take on to the high school program. And so our model doesn't totally talk about how you get the high school feeder in place in a middle school level. But I anticipate that a number of our schools, when we look at what has been particularly successful across New York and other places, that that will come to the fore, and that is something that we will talk about from a perspective of curriculum, but that's a really critical thing for them to do. And it's not only themed programs, but it's also support programs. And so one of the senators talked about advanced placement. It's very powerful to have programs in middle school that develop reading skills and writing skills so that students, when they get to high school, can be successful in more advanced coursework, whether it's dual enrollment, AP, or IB. And so the middle school program also feeds there very, very well into supporting all of the students that want to go into higher level coursework. I think we have to look at the level of middle school, because that's where you lose kids.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And if you can keep them interested with a very high demanding, but as I said, high interest program, I think you really
Yes.
end up with much more success, and they'll stay with you in high school.
Yes, and I think that creating sort of a pipeline at that level is probably going to be very helpful, especially in some communities, but also at the early college program, so that we're now creating a system that works with young people from elementary, but certainly middle school through college. So.
Right, and you asked about where we have that in our budget.
Yes.
And we specifically asked for an increase.
Yeah.
3.5 million increase over the current funding levels for early college, high school.
Oh, great.
And we also asked for $7 million for the P-TECH program model,
Okay.
which
Yes.
I think is also important in taking
Yes.
the idea of career and technical and hooking that to higher level coursework so that a
Yes.
student ends up with basically an associate degree at the end of that. And if they need to, it doesn't have to be a 6-year program. Lots of kids can get through it in 4.5 or 5 years, but we put them in the program that'll support them to have some kind of certification and or job preparation prior to leaving.
Yes.
So both of those programs, I think, are extremely important, and it's whether or not a student chooses to go to dual enrollment, AP, IB, whatever kind of coursework is going to provide that opportunity for them to be competitive when they want to apply to different colleges and universities and to be ready for whatever they want to do.
Great, thank you.
I see no other senators on this issue, and we thank the commissioner for her time and attention and willingness to participate in this discussion. I noted that there were a number of letters forwarded on to the commissioner. I would ask, and obviously this is not a mandate, but I would simply ask that the committee be copied when you made a request of the commissioner or any part of the department, so that we can assist you in effect, that we're aware, because when the department comes back, they may ask us and we don't know anything about it, and we can't help you. So it would assist us. Obviously, it's not a mandate, you do as you please on that, but we'd ask that be done. The new people with respect to touching the opt-out group, many of us can do the same work. Going back to the districts, I know I've had conversations with some of the leaders in the opt-out program on Long Island, requesting that they give the new leadership a chance. There are new people here. They're making commitments. They're trying to do the right thing. Give them a chance. Let's not hit them over the head with a hammer before they've done something wrong. Let's try and enter into conversation. Let's talk to people before we do something that we don't necessarily have to do. And I think we'll see that. And a lot of them like that idea. They're open to a discussion, and they want to talk. And they feel that they've been left out. Well, let's not leave them out anymore. And I think you've heard here a person who is open and willing to entertain and meet with people and talk and discuss. We have, and I think this is just an aside, I think it's the first time in a long, long time, because I can't remember when it ever happened before. 3 major parts of the educational system in New York State, New York City being the largest component of students, the largest part of students, being run by Carmen Farina, and the state being run by Commissioner Elia, and SUNY being run by Nancy Zinford. You have 3.
This is the year of the woman.
Very, very bright, very capable. I've met with all 3.
Thank you.
They're very capable, very bright, and I don't think it's ever been that way before. So now I turned to my wife and I said, well, it's up to you now. Fix it. But no, we have an opportunity here, and they have an opportunity with some really good people who have served in every capacity within their relative systems that they're responsible for. So it's a good thing. Seeing no further conversation, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.